Hey, I'm so glad you're back. Welcome to the podcast this week. I am pumped because today we are answering a question that I feel like I get a lot. And I know every single one of you has probably had to answer this question in your own life at some point. And that is, how do I overcome my fears and go all in on my dream? Whether my dream is actually leaving my 9 to 5 and going in on my business, or hiring, or scaling to the next level of my business, or just overcoming whatever mental obstacle we're facing at the moment. Today I'm pumped because my friend Lindsey Schwartz, who many of you know from Powerhouse Women or from Lindsey's own podcast, is coming in to talk about what she is also seeing with so many female entrepreneurs and the four most common fears that we all face. And then specifically for those of you who are wondering, when is it time? When is it time to take this next step and to do this big thing and to go all in on my dream? She's going to talk through how to decide when it's right for you. So my fellow Midwest is the best gal from Wisconsin. I am so pumped to have Lindsey on the show today. You guys are going to love her. She is as genuine as they come. Please help me welcome my friend Lindsey Schwartz of Powerhouse Women. Let's talk about your business, strategy, and the juicy details of what actually works, from mainstream fashion to fashion on Main Street, and the entire ecosystem behind it. How do we scale your company and do it with the balance and the happiness that we all seek? Let's hear from those insiders, experts, and strategists that actually make it happen. I'm your host, Ashley Alderson from the Boutique Hub, and I can't wait to chat. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast this week. I know if I've said this once, I've said it 500 times. And if you're from Texas, don't be offended. I'm going to say it again, but it's Midwest is the best. And today to prove it here on the podcast is Lindsey Schwartz. Lindsey, I'm so pumped you're here.
Woohoo! I'm like fist pumping as you're saying that because it's just the truth. It just is.
I just love, like, anytime I travel, especially in the boutique community, like, I'm going to get chastised for this because the majority of our audience is from Texas, and I love you guys. But you're so proud. Like, I love that about you, like, Texans. But, like, Midwest, like, we got to start rising up. We got to start fist pumping, like, with some A's and some O's and you betchas and fish fries and you name it. So anytime I meet someone else from the Midwest, I'm always incredibly excited. And so when you and I made that connection, you were at the Boutique Summit this year, I was super pumped. So
It's
Wisconsinites
true.
collide today on the podcast.
I always say it's science. It's an immediate best friend status. So I don't know if it's like that anywhere else. I think we're just too polite in the Midwest. We're like, oh no, it's okay. We'll let everyone else be the best. But the truth is, Midwest girls rock for sure.
That's true. What are other, like, when you travel or when people meet you and they're like, where are you from? Number one, like, what are the things you think give it away in a hot second that you're from the Midwest? And what are the things like that people just, notice about you that just stand out when you're from the Midwest? What's your opinion?
Oh my gosh. Well, I do believe that when you collide with another Midwesterner, even if you've, like me, I've been gone from the Midwest, lived in Phoenix now for about 15 years. And the biggest compliment is when people are like, oh, I didn't even hear it in your accent. But the moment I get around someone who is from the Midwest, the long O's or just those little dialects that give it away, that definitely comes out. What I would hope people would say is that I really do just love people so freaking much. And I think that's part of the Midwest culture. Like, I grew up watching my parents. They live still, and we grew up in Green Bay, so right outside of Lambeau Field. And I had seen them on multiple occasions invite total strangers. There'd just be strangers at our house having a beer and just like relaxing before the game. And I'm like, how do you know that person? And my dad's like, oh, he was, just walking by and looked thirsty. And you do not do that. I remember moving to Phoenix and I opened the door for so many solicitors in the first 6 months of having my own house because I thought it was a neighbor coming to welcome me with a basket of goodies. It was not. So, there's that. It's like the personable quality that I don't want to shy away from, but it was very different in Phoenix, that's for sure.
That is so awesome. I love that. It's like, my mom taught me once I got my driver's license, like, I should be careful waving at everybody in certain parts of the country.
Yes.
Because I just naturally wave, like, you drive by, like, I'll wave. And then people are like, do you know that person? And I'm like, no, but why wouldn't you wave at them anyway? Like, I want them to have a good day.
Right.
Hello. Yes.
I am with you. I still do it. And now I think I've done enough personal development where I don't get my feelings hurt if they don't wave back. I'm like, well,
Mm.
that's their loss because I am an amazing friend. So they could have been part of this world, but nope. So I definitely still do that. What else is there? I was just doing something the other day and I was like, oh wow, that was such a Midwest thing. Like saying sorry. So it's always, oh sorry.
Oh,
Like you just
yes.
bumped into me, but I just apologized to you. How does that work out?
I find myself at the grocery store doing that all the time. Oh, oh, sorry. Oh, I was just looking. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's a bad habit.
Right.
I've got to break that habit.
I
Very
catch
good.
myself in it so many times and yeah, same. I'm on a mission to break it and once in a while
Mhm.
it'll slip through.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sure you can, from your vantage point, all the women that you meet on a daily basis and the women in your community, I'm sure you see all kinds of interesting habits or just, pieces of culture come together and kind of collide. I love the conversation that we're about to have today because I feel like you and I come from very similar spaces where we're both leading communities of women, lots of entrepreneurial spirits in our community. Mine just happens to be very specific to boutiques and to retailers, and you have the opportunity to serve women of all types in all different types of business. So this is going to be so much fun. Thank you again for coming on the podcast today. I'm curious, let's start here today. Just from your vantage point, what do you feel like some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing across your community right now of women in business? What are they facing? What are they dealing with? And how are we helping them overcome?
Mm. It's one of those things that I can think back to what inspired me to start this conversation in this community in the
Hmm.
first place. And this is still so true today that I will meet incredibly talented women, women who, when you meet them or when they share like this idea they have, or I've thought about creating this thing, those things that you
Yeah.
hear and you're like, yeah, that needs to exist. How's not someone not already doing that? But then
Yeah.
in the next breath, they'll share the reason why they don't feel ready or they don't think they have what it takes or they don't have a big enough audience. It's like on the other side of this big idea that is so apparent to everyone else around us that you're the one, you have the skills that are required in order to make that thing
Hmm.
happen or at least get it started. And that clearly you were inspired to start this to have this idea in the first place. So there
Hmm.
must be something in there for you, but it's so freaking easy to see the positives in someone else than it is to see in
Mm.
ourselves. And that was my experience too. It was my experience for myself. And then as I started to meet more women who had big ideas or were at the beginning stages, they would share these fears, these doubts, these insecurities. And every single time, whether we'd be sitting for coffee or on a Zoom call, it would be one of those
Yeah.
conversations where I'd pause and I'd be like, hold on, did no one tell you? Everything you're describing, I feel it all the time. Anyone you're looking up to right now feels that too. That's
Yeah.
not your sign to stop. It's actually a sign you're getting dangerously close to like your next breakthrough. And
Yeah.
I think it's just so important, and this is why I love you. I love the way you lead. Is you lead this way too, where you're equally aspirational and you're showing women what's possible, but you're very real about the parts that are still hard. Because
Hmm.
I've yet to, I don't know about you, I haven't gotten to the point where I never have fear or doubt or never second guess myself. Or not a week goes by that I don't
Yeah.
shed a few tears over something because I'm
Yeah.
growing. And I think that the more conversations we have, the more honesty we share, it makes sure that those who are just in the beginning stages or about to go through like a big growth spurt, that's when it gets like
Hmm.
real uncomfortable. It makes
Hmm.
sure that those people don't stop because the truth
Yeah.
is it's just as uncomfortable if you stop and you sit and wait in the discomfort as it is if you just lean in and you're like, well, screw it. I'm going to figure out my way through and grow in the process because that's ultimately, I think, what I've realized in 15 years of being an entrepreneur. It's not actually about the business I'm building, it's who I'm becoming in the process. And
Oh,
that's the woman that I'm really, really proud of.
man, that's so good. That's so powerful. You're right, because it's so easy to get lost in um, other people's opinions and the accomplishments and the when I reach this stage, I'll finally be happy. And it's totally about the journey and pushing through the uncomfortable pieces to get where we need to go next. And you're right, that fear, man, I still feel it today as much as I felt it when I got started. I'm curious if you could categorize, do you feel like there are fears that are most common in your community or in women entrepreneurs in general, and ways that we should address them?
Yes. And this is something I have spent so much time thinking about and boiling down, because what I get obsessed about is, okay, how can I give women tools? How can I apply tools for myself? Because I bump up against all of these things too.
Yeah.
But the more I started to have conversations with our community, with other entrepreneurs, you know what I realized? I realized it really kind of comes down to, I drilled it down to four. I think there's even a couple of these that are like bigger for us than others. And what's funny, and I'll kind of unpack this, because what I think we do is then I think we pretend that our challenge is we don't have enough time, or we're
Mm,
overwhelmed, or these other things that feel safer to say that that's what's in our way. But what we're
yeah.
not doing is we're not saying, you know what, I'm scared. I'm bumping up against myself. I feel like a total imposter.
Yeah.
And that was my life. I had created this life where I was really afraid to push into that discomfort. But what I did instead is I filled my schedule with a lot of busy, so that
Mhm.
no one could ever challenge me on the fact that I
Mm,
wasn't really tapping into my full potential. So I think bringing that honesty and that self-awareness first and foremost, not to say, I mean, all of us have busy schedules. You have
yeah.
children and a business, and no one would look at either of our lives and say that we're lazy.
Yeah.
But I had to find that honesty for myself of saying, is this really that I'm overwhelmed? Or, yes, I'm probably not managing my schedule according to what my goals are, but what's really underneath that? And it was
Mm,
almost always one of these four things. Number one being, and this was the biggest for me, was the fear of criticism and fear of what
mhm.
other people are going to think. And what are they going to think if I succeed? What are they going to think if I fail? The whole gamut. So,
Yeah.
fear of that criticism or judgment, or just the disappointing people. And that can be real, because relationships are messy. And I
Mm,
always say, when you're going kind of to a new level in business, there's inevitably things that can't come with. Sometimes it's a habit or a
mhm.
train of thought or a belief. Sometimes it is a relationship. And that is tough.
Yeah.
I'm actually in it right now with a relationship that means a lot to me, and I'm going through it. So that one has always had a really, really strong hold. I have to be
Mhm.
aware of where I'm making decisions based on trying to avoid the fear of disappointing someone else
Yeah.
versus really managing that and doing what I know is right for myself for this vision. That's the biggest one. The other one that I see all the time, and I'm seeing this a lot in my community, I wonder if you see it too. I kind of categorize it as like the fear of uncertainty. Now, how it shows
Yeah.
up, your specific flavor, those of you listening, might be, tell me if this is you, like perfectionism, getting
Yeah.
ready to get ready. You're always kind of in the planning for that next big thing versus doing it
Yes.
faster and less perfectly to just get it out there.
Oh,
So this fear
done
of
is better than
uncertainty, or
perfect.
right, yes. And
Yeah.
again, I'm like, I have a story for every one of these. I have definitely been through every single one. So the
Yeah.
fear of uncertainty, or feeling like you need to have like this perfectly laid out plan before you can take step one, that
Mhm.
that can really grip people, especially in the beginning stages. Then as we move on, I think there's this always present fear of being an imposter, right? That imposter syndrome. Because if you think about it, I'm sure you right now, I know I do, have a vision for your brand that's bigger than the person you are today. So
Mhm.
there's always a gap between who I am now and who I need to become in order to fulfill the next part of my vision. So it's normal to feel like an imposter. In fact, if you don't, I would
Mm,
push back and say that those of you listening, if you're not feeling at least a little bit like, can I really do this?
mhm.
I bet you haven't scratched the surface of what you're actually capable of. I don't think you've even reached that point. If you can look at what's in front of you and say, "Yep, I got this." What
Mhm.
if the vision expanded a little bit to make you that just perfect in between amount of uncomfortable where it stretches you, you grow, but it also reminds you that like this is the path, right? The journey itself is what we're here for. So that's the third
Yeah.
one. And then here's something that I see with women who have had success in another area. I had a previous business, and this one almost took me out of the game when I had a vision for what I've built now with this community. And it's the fear of being a beginner.
Mm,
where especially if you came from a world where you've had success, you have recognition, maybe you're making great money, but you know that's not your place anymore.
yeah.
But you have this other vision that doesn't have any certainty in what it's going to turn into, but you just know. It's like, I think back, I just knew I was being pulled in this other direction, and what I had to give up was all of the things on the surface that I thought I wanted, right? Those external
Mhm.
things. And I had to go back to being a beginner. I had
Yeah.
never started a podcast. I had never done an event. I knew how to do my previous business and I liked how that felt. That felt comfortable to me.
Yeah.
So that fear of being a beginner and not wanting to kind of like humble ourselves back to square one, I
Hmm.
think stops a lot of people in fully reaching the potential that they could have. So when I hear from my community the things that like get in people's way, almost always it comes back to one of those four things. Without fail, I can usually drill it down and bring it back to one of those four.
That's so good. That is so good. I hope everyone today just jotted them down. I feel like that's such a good point. And I'm curious how you encourage your community to like live this. But it's such a good point of just journaling on a daily basis. Like when you have that stress, when you
Yeah.
have that anxiety, like, why is this bothering me? And then just
Yeah.
asking, is it one of these four? And then what can I do to overcome it if it is one of these four? Are there other ways you would suggest,
Yeah.
like just kind of going through a process of analyzing that in our own lives on a daily basis?
Okay, so this is so good, and I'm glad that you circled back to. But how do we? Okay, so if we become aware, then what do we friggin' do about it? Okay, because
Yeah.
I don't want to leave you just hanging with this awareness. Because I think what also can happen, I love personal development, and if I'm not careful, I even use that to procrastinate. Where I'm like, well, let me just sit here and analyze why I'm so afraid of stepping out there and having my negative aunt who doesn't like anything in the world. Why would she like my business? But I'm going to sit here and try to figure out. No, we don't want to do
Yeah.
that. We want to have the self-awareness
Karen.
to say, right? Like
Yeah.
how is this showing up in my life? But here's what I have also found. I think inside of whatever kind of your biggest, let's just call it like your Achilles heel, that thing that just trips you up. And for me,
Hmm.
like I said, the people pleasing, the fear of criticism, that is kind of in different forms always one of my biggest like roadblocks, hurdles to overcome. It doesn't mean that I just like overcome it once and I never have to deal with it. It kind of like changes outfits and comes back. I always say it's like the movie Bridesmaids where she like puts on the sunglasses and she's trying to like get away with being in first class and she's like, "No, it's not
Yeah.
me. It's Mrs. Iglesias."
Stove.
So it's like
Yeah.
our fears do that too. So they just come back but in kind of like in a different outfit and they're like, "Hi, I'm a new fear." And you're like, "No, you're not. This is the same thing."
Yeah.
Is to realize, I believe, and I had this awareness for myself. I had this huge aha coaching someone else. It's always so much easier to see it in someone else's life. That I think on the other side of the thing that we think is stopping us, that we think is
Hmm.
getting in our way, is actually a clue to one of our biggest strengths. So for me, I can tend to get way too concerned about the opinions of others. But
Hmm.
on the other side of that is the fact that I really do care. This is why I'm great at building community. People can feel it. They know that I actually
Mm.
do care about them individually. I want to know what's going on in their lives and I want to help them. Now,
Yeah.
what can happen, I always think of it like a pendulum, right? So I have to always just be aware. Am I in my strength? Am I
Yeah.
really leading from that place of genuinely caring, having my heart wide
Hmm.
open? Yes, I might get hurt. Someone might not like me or might not think my motivations are true. That's one of the risks that I take to just
Hmm.
have my heart open and lead the way that I lead. But I have to be careful of when it swings to the other side of that same trait, which is I care, where I can start to care too much and base
Hmm.
my decisions on, well, what are other people going to think about this? So if
Yeah.
you struggle with like people pleasing tendencies, realize that you
Mm.
don't have to, because I think what I thought, I honestly believed that I had to get to the point of not caring. Now, you tell
Mm.
someone who struggled with people pleasing to not care, that's like telling someone not to breathe air.
Yeah.
And some people really don't. I remember like talking with this through with my husband, and he's like, I really like, I love you so much, and I don't understand why you care, like that this person doesn't like you. And it was in
Uh-huh.
that moment that I was like, yeah, why do I? Why is it two people can have such a different relationship with
Oh,
it? So
yeah.
instead of trying to be less of myself, which is less of that strength that I do care, What if I just start to become aware of when I'm on the healthy end of that spectrum versus the unhealthy side of that same trait, which is putting a little too much emphasis on trying to make other people happy? Okay, so for those of you that struggle with people pleasing, I want you to first acknowledge you don't have to be less of who you are. You don't have to
Yeah.
be calloused or not care. You
Yeah.
actually, the fact that you care, I bet, is your superpower.
Yeah.
Just make sure that it's caring it's caring in a way that furthers your vision. It doesn't start to make you second guess yourself.
Mm.
Same thing with, fear of uncertainty, that perfectionistic tendency. I bet those of you who really wrestle with that, I bet you have really, really high standards. Like, you are the person who, when you do something, you do it to the best and biggest of your ability. That is probably the thing that makes you successful. And so realizing there's a healthy trait in that, but then there's also a point where you have to say, like you said so perfectly, done is better than perfect. And what if I get this 70% of the way there and then launch it and perfect it as I go, versus thinking that we're ever going to get to some 100%? Because I bet your 70% is like other people's 150. So for you, maybe it's 60%, maybe it's 70. Like, when I get it 70% of the way there, I launch it no matter what. And yes, it's going to feel friggin' uncomfortable because I like to be perfect, right? I launched my first book. This is like the epitome of learning done is better than perfect. Had it professionally edited by several people, launched it. And the moment we hit bestseller status on Amazon, my publisher called and she said, "Lindsey, I'm sick to my stomach," which was not what I thought she was going to say.
Yeah.
But she said, "There's a typo on the cover." And I
Oh,
remember, because I had really, really adopted this.
yeah.
Done is better than perfect. I'm going to get it. I'm going to put out the best thing that I know how and
Yeah.
trust that whatever happens is for me and it's for others. And you better believe in that moment, I either had a choice to beat myself up because it wasn't perfect, or laugh about it and know that this is going to be an amazing story to share on podcasts. And, obviously we got it updated, but it was the perfect thing, like test from the universe to say, did you really learn this lesson? Is done really better than perfect?
Yeah.
And that imperfect book went on to create this entire community and global movement that people see now. What if I would have said, oh my gosh, that wasn't perfect. Let me pull back
Mm.
and not share this with the world. So whatever your fear is, I want you to look what within that is actually for you, for your growth, or, and I think it's an and, tied to something that's actually your biggest strength. And that helped me really move through, instead of feeling like I can't be successful if I have this fear. No. It's, how do I bring this fear along with me into this next season of growth? So I bet you have so many stories like that too. I know you're always growing yourself, but it's a trip. It
It
never
is.
ends.
It never ends. Oh my gosh, I love that story. Thank you for sharing. And those are so powerful. And I think it's so refreshing to just say, a lot of times we're at odds with our fears. We're constantly fighting our fears. But what if, like you said, you just looked at it as, oh, hello, like really our fear is here to protect us from something, right? But our fear really is probably wrapped up in one of our greatest strengths. So that's a really good piece of perspective. I'm assuming you can take that idea and really make and build and grow from there to make that your source of confidence, right? So how do you see women moving from that place of fear into making that their powerhouse, right? And making that their place of confidence? How do they find that?
Ooh, gosh, if we could just bottle that up and sell it to people, right? We would be
Right.
bajillionaires.
Yep.
I think, kind of along with that realization that I had to come to for myself, seeing my own strength within the fear or the thing that I thought was an inadequacy, starting to ask myself, well, maybe this is part of my story because it's meant to be a part of my impact. What is it that I think makes me inadequate, that it had to be a part of my story so that I could make the biggest impact? And along
Yeah.
with kind of like the fear of what other people were going to think, definitely the perfectionism. I have such high standards for myself and my life and whatever I put out there, that I know, and I have to, that self-awareness piece, I'm going to keep bringing it back, because I think it's always about deepening the level of understanding you have about yourself. but it's realizing that had I put out the perfect book or built this business that just overnight was successful and never struggled, do you know how
Mm-hmm.
unrelatable I would be?
Mm-hmm.
So, for you, can you look at your own story and see how what you think makes you inadequate actually makes you more relatable? It gives you the foundation to make a bigger impact. And it does not matter if you are, coaching and mentoring women like we do, or if you are selling products on the internet. You are what make your business so special, and people
Mm-hmm.
connect with you whether or not they can physically see you in your brand, like you're the front facing. They feel you, they feel your
Mm-hmm.
authenticity. And I think when we can stop being afraid of letting our inadequacies, I'll use air quotes because I don't think that they actually are, but the things that we feel make us
Yeah.
inadequate, if we can start to realize that those actually make us relatable. Like, when was the last time that you
Yeah.
saw someone whose life was perfect, their butt was perfect, they
Yeah.
never wake up with like crazy hair? I look like a troll doll because I have like short hair, so I wear my hair up and it just sticks straight up. I look like a troll doll when I wake up. When was the last time you saw someone whose life was so perfect and you said, gosh, I just relate to them, I just feel
Yeah.
seen by them?
No,
Probably not.
no, no, not at all. And you know what's funny? Like, as I hear you say this, and I go back to us joking about being from the Midwest, um, this was like my whole, like a big part of my story for starting the boutique hub was I felt like, gosh, I'm from the
Yes.
Midwest. That's not relatable. Everybody else is from LA or New York, or, fashion is this and fashion is that. But what about the rest of us? And that was it was a fear of mine. But then come to find out, like I turned that around, and that has really been a big piece of the boutique hub is, you know what? No, boutiques are the thing that connect everybody to fashion, no matter where you're from, Midwest or Texas, hello, Texas,
Yeah.
or anybody else. And so now that is a huge strength of ours. So that's so true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely lived out in my life as well. Yeah.
And listen, again, I'm not here to tell anyone that I used to struggle with all of this and never feel it anymore. I keep
Yeah.
finding myself limiting what I think I'm worthy of, what I think is available to me,
Mm,
downplaying my own success and thinking, well, I could never connect with that person. Every day I have to catch
yeah.
myself having those thoughts and then come back to, but why? Like, but really, who says? And usually it's
Yeah.
just me. I'm the only one. I'm the one who's saying what's possible, what's not possible.
Mhm.
And I just think that's so cool. I love building business because it forces me to get to know myself and discover new things to just make me like a more awesome human being, a more effective person. And I'm
Yes.
I'm just really obsessed with that journey. The playground that
Yeah.
I get to learn on just happens to be business. So I think
Yeah.
when we can bring that almost that playful energy, that curious energy, instead of being so hard on ourselves about the things that we have to overcome, that's where the
Mhm.
sweet spot is. That's where you stop struggling against the thing that you struggle with, right? You stop struggling against your own habits and beliefs, and instead you're like, "Oh, cool. I just learned that this is
Yeah.
something that I still get to overcome. I wonder what's waiting for me on the other side of this." So
Yes.
it really helped me because I can be very hard on myself to start bringing more of that playful energy and treat it like a
Yeah.
game. Like, it actually is fun when I
Yeah.
get to learn and overcome something. It's just not always super fun, like right in the middle. It's like a really tough workout when you're like sweating and you hate your trainer. You hate it, but then when you're done, you
Yeah.
feel amazing.
Yes. We talk a lot in the Boutique Hub about how business is a game, right? It's the great game of business. And if you're not winning, you're learning. If you're not winning,
That's
you're
so
learning.
good.
Yeah, always opportunity. I'm sure you get this question a lot, Lindsay. And this question is so related to all these fears. I'm sure they're all tied up in this question. But do you have a lot of people in your community that come to you and they're like, hey, I have this steady career. I have this 9 to 5, right? That's paying the bills. But now I want to start this business. I have this dream. And when is the tipping point? Like, when is the point that I leave my career and I go all into this business? And then all these fears are coming up, right? What's your answer to that? How do you help people through that journey from actually like quitting the job and going all in on business?
Ooh, I just got chills as you were describing that because I can every time so vividly remember being in that place for myself. And right now, in actuality, My husband is going through that transition. I was actually right
Ah,
before I hopped on here, we were
yeah,
talking about his exit date and our strategy. And what's
yeah.
crazy is we know we have the evidence from going all in on the vision that I started to know what happens on the other side of making that leap. And we still are like scared and we feel all the feels. And we know that this discomfort now is it's a sign that we're about to grow again and we're about to throw ourselves out into the
Yeah.
unknown of, well, what is this going to look like? So a couple of things, because I do think it's different for everyone. Number one, I want to
Hmm.
acknowledge that it depends on what your life looks like. So if you are single
Yeah.
and the sole provider for yourself or your family, that's going to look different from
Hmm.
someone. I had the blessing of having a 2 income household. We don't have
Hmm.
children yet. So I had a little bit of a different scenario where we could afford to be a little bit more risky. So you just have to know for yourself, there's no right or wrong way.
Yeah.
And then I think back to self awareness, I think it's knowing how you show up as your best. Are you someone who's like, burn the ships and I'm going to figure it out? Or if you left too early, is that going to actually create an unhealthy amount of pressure? Because there is something to be
Yeah.
said when we start to take this thing that's our passion, it's our passion project, we love it. And now all of a sudden, there's the added pressure of this has to pay for my livelihood.
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes it less fun. It really does. And so I think it's a very individual decision, but some of the things to consider leading up to it are the very left-brained. I'm like stereotypical, I don't know, Capricorn firstborn, like very, like calculating and making sure I have my spreadsheets and all the things. So, what does your life look like? Where could you cut back if you needed to? If you really just are so restless. I don't know if you actually know this about me. My first job that I got right straight out of college, leaving college in Wisconsin, and what brought me to Arizona is I sold carpet. I sold commercial carpet. So,
What?
like
I
when
didn't
I
know this.
say I was like
Yeah.
so ready to leave,
Yeah.
and it was a beautiful opportunity and industry. It's actually how I met my husband too. So like so many
Wow.
blessings. But I will never forget. I had already started my first business. It was a health and fitness business, and I was sitting at lunch. This is, I think, how you start to pay attention to these clues. Sitting at lunch with one of my favorite customers, one of our biggest customers, a whole chain of like pizza restaurants, kind of like Chuck E. Cheese, but different, local to Arizona. And we did all their flooring, right? This is going to sound so sexy, you guys. I know I just took a massive left turn, but I'm sitting there and he's talking about whether he should choose this kind of flooring or this type. And I'm nodding along and I'm smiling, very Midwest. And inside, there's a little voice that was going, I don't effing care. I was just like, oh, like it was the first time where I was like, oh, I think I've overstayed my welcome here. And the truth was, out of fear, I don't think I had really gotten serious enough to start putting the plan into place. So at
Mm.
that point, and here's the step: if you're having your like, there's inside a little toddler having a meltdown over like, I'm done, I'm so checked out, I'm not even showing up as my best. I think it's time to first and foremost look at the
Mm.
numbers. So often I see this with women that I mentor, they don't know their numbers, so they don't actually know could they live on their business. And it usually is
Hmm.
more achievable than they realize, but they've never been willing to look at the numbers, or it feels scary to look
Yeah.
at numbers. So first and foremost, look at your numbers. What do you need in order to pay for your life? What do you like have coming in? But then on the other side of that is when you energetically make the decision, because that
Yeah.
day I energetically made the decision. I'm done. I gave myself an end date. And that pressure, again, I operate well under calculated pressure. And the one thing I will always do is bet on myself, because here's
Yeah.
what I asked. I said, okay, what's the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
The worst case scenario is that it wouldn't work out. And what would I do? So I was like, okay, well, here's my fear. It won't work out. I won't be able to make enough money, etc. I said, okay, well, what would I do in that case? I said, well, I'd probably get a job. I'm great at sales. I'm already in sales. And I was like, wait a minute. I am literally living my worst case scenario.
Oh,
I'm living it
yeah.
right now. So what do you have to lose by going all in on yourself? Even if you don't leave the job right away, making the decision and starting to put the plan into action, because nothing moves until we get our energy, like that definitive line in the sand where we say like, this is happening.
Yeah.
And there's something that switches on. I don't know if you have a moment like that too, where it just switches on. I've seen it happen with my husband, Elliot, where we sat down one day and I said, all right, when are you leaving? Give me a date. I was
Mhm.
like, he was like, whoa. But I said, let's actually put this into motion because we keep talking about it. We're not
Yeah.
planning it. And we did. We picked his date, and there was this email. I don't really understand what it was, but he was waiting for this really important email that was taking weeks and weeks and weeks. And in
Yeah.
the conversation, when we set the date, boom, the email came through.
Oh.
And I just believe it's like when we start to
Mm.
act in accordance with what we want, that's when things start to shift. So that might have been a longer
Yes.
answer than you bargained for, but there's
Yeah.
so many layers to it. And I just really want to honor that it's going to look different for everyone,
Yeah.
but it's making that decision and then starting to act accordingly.
I love that. There's so much analysis paralysis that comes in and tells us lies and speaks to our fears, but I love that process. Both from a creative standpoint that like makes you feel good on the inside and like feeds you from the inside out, but also like from a strategy and numbers standpoint and how important it is
Yeah.
to have that plan on paper. And those of you in marriage too, that maybe one of you is more creative and one of you is more analytical, you have to have both in order for that to work with your relationship. Because I feel like I've ridden
Yeah.
that high and low too of, oh, well, I think it'll work. Yeah, but where's the plan on paper that'll show me, like
Yeah.
this is how I'm going to act it out. So that's so
Ooh,
helpful.
actually, that's so
Man,
important. I think to just say too, you really reminded me, and this is important for those of you who are in a two-income household. Maybe your partner is the one who's more safety, security minded. This is the other thing I see
mhm,
show up so often is this feeling of like, well, they're not supporting me. They're not getting behind my vision. I had to realize that for
yes,
Elliot, he is more safety and security minded. So instead of me just saying, I trust myself, because he believed in me. There was no lack of belief. I just had to show him on paper, hey, here's what I project I could do if I were able to put all of my time and energy into this. Do you feel good with this? Here's how much we have in savings. Here's the plan. He just needed to know that I had a plan behind
yeah,
what I wanted to do. And then he was all in. So those of you who are maybe more the creative person and you feel like your
yeah,
spouse isn't speaking your language, just
yeah,
understand they may need to hear it more from that, like knowing that you have safety and security in mind and
mhm,
backing it up with some numbers. It'll be powerful for you and for them. But I'm actually really glad you said that because that piece can so often trip
mhm,
women up, especially if
yeah,
they feel like they're wired a little bit differently than their partner. And most
yeah.
of us are, let's be honest.
Yes, I've totally lived that. I have totally lived that in the creation of the boutique hub. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because it's so
Yeah.
important. I feel like I've already like we've gone a lot of like really important directions and taken time, but I do have one more thing I really want to ask you. So those of you that are listening, hang on. I have a couple more questions for Lindsey. Your whole business and my whole business are built around community, and I think that that's so. It's so important to all types of women-owned businesses today. So many of us are just instinctively like we're community builders. What tips would you give to those women who are listening in what does it take to build a really powerful and really long-lasting community?
Hmm. Well, I mean, you all listening have the perfect example in Ashley, in just seeing what you built and getting to experience it and getting to see you at your best at the event in, gosh, when was that? Was that in like, it was like a couple
March.
months ago,
Yeah,
April, May?
March in
What is time
Dallas.
now? Yes, exactly.
I don't even
Feels like
know.
it was just yesterday. And I want to point that out because if you're listening to this podcast, if you're part of this community, I'm going to share a couple of tangible things and I want you to be able to start to relate it to what you experience here. I think
Mm,
that one of the best ways we can start to piece together the right plan for us is to notice how we operate as participants in communities, as consumers, right? If you have a business, think about how other businesses that are similar make you feel and what are those special things that
mm,
just take it to another level. Now, what I think makes a really strong community is it really boils down to one thing. It's understanding that I think the difference between an audience and a community is so subtle, but it's so powerful. An audience, which we all do need audiences, we need people to
mhm,
know we exist and buy our stuff and know how we can help them. But an audience, building my audience is really asking the question, how can I get more people to connect with me? How can I get more people to see that I have something I can offer them? And that's beautiful. We want to be asking that question. But it's taking it another layer deeper to say, now, how can I get those people to connect with each other? Because one of the most fundamental needs we have as humans is to feel like we belong, especially when in challenging times. And I've been through a ton of challenging times as an entrepreneur. Yeah. Finding or being able to create the feeling of belonging for people is how you create brand loyalty that goes so deep. It's like people will get tattoos. Someone got a tattoo of our slogan on their leg in my handwriting. And I didn't know how to feel about that. But what it showed me, like, meaning I was like, well, who am I? Like, what? This is crazy. And to realize that it's because people not only connect with me, not only connect with you, they connect with each other. They find their people in your space. So whether that's, let's say you have a boutique, maybe it is an in-person boutique. How can you create opportunities for your audience, your shoppers, the type of woman or man that you're serving? Can you create opportunities for them to find the people they need? Whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's, moms, can you create opportunities for people to connect with each other? And then you become this place, this platform where people know, number one, they belong, but they also can find others who think and believe and act like them and who understand them. And the depth of the value that offers actually is priceless. It's not possible to even quantify it, but it's a feeling. And it's the feeling you probably get when you're, in the Boutique Hub community, when you're at one of the events. It goes beyond just the value that you're getting. It's a place of belonging. And then asking yourself just really simply, what do I want to unify people around? When I think of the brands and the products that I love to shop from, it's because they make me feel something. They make me feel like this aspirational identity, this version of myself that I know I want to be. And they reflect that back to me and make me feel like not only can I become that, but I'm going to surround myself with other people who are on the path to become that as well. And I think answering those questions, what are you unifying people around? One of the most powerful things to create unity around is an aspirational identity. Like, what do these people want to become? What do they want to feel? And then asking, how can you help your people, right? The people who resonate with you and your brand, how can you help them connect with more people that are like them? And if you work those two into your marketing, just into your business, the DNA of your business. Like, for me, it's not part of my marketing plan. It's who I am. I show up and every day I'm thinking, how can this one Instagram caption help other people can find and connect with others? How can this one, free training we're doing, or this one offering, this one email, how can this email be the catalyst for connection? And when you start to look at your business through that, that's where it exponentially grows, because now people want to invite their friends who are also like them to shop with you or to consume your content. And I don't think I was aware of what we were doing until a couple years in, where people started asking me to train on this. But when I broke it down, it came down to those fundamental things. And they're so simple, but like beyond powerful. And I know that you have all of those woven into the DNA of your business too.
Oh, this is so good. This is so, so good and so helpful. And no matter what stage of business you're at, I think this is really, really impactful. So, wow, Lindsey, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all of your wisdom. And you're such a bright light. What you said about caring and building this business around truly who you are and your real desire to serve others, like that just comes through so clearly when you speak. Just it radiates without you even saying words. So I want to recognize that in you and thank you for the inspiration that you are to so many other women, because you truly are changing lives. You truly are.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the Midwest in me. And thank you.
Very Midwesty. All right, Lindsey, we will link up everything about Powerhouse Women and all of your contacts, your Instagram. We'll link everything up in the show notes so everyone can give you a follow and get to know your community as well. But thank you for being a fellow Midwesterner and joining me today. Much appreciated.
Ashley, oh, it's so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope that you loved it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a rating and review down below for a chance to be one of our featured listeners each and every week. For more information on our spirit of community over competition and how to access complete show notes and bonus downloads from our guests, head on over to theboutiquehub.com and join the community. We'll see you next week.